It begins in this way, then. You have a problem, which is, I want out. You see, here I'm involved in the samsara, in the round. And it's becoming extremely inconvenient, painful. I feel threatened by disease and death and loss of possessions and friends and so on, and it's just all terrible. Is there anybody who knows what to do? Well, it looks as if there were some guys over there who don't seem worried. They are priests or monks or sages or whatever it may be, and so people go and say to those people, look, what are we going to do? And those people turn back and say, all right, isn't it clear that you suffer because you desire? You always want something else than what is. And so you're always being disappointed. You are made so that you wear out. So you fall apart. And you want not to be that way. But you see, if you weren't falling apart all the time, you wouldn't be alive. So there's a contradiction between what you say. You say, I would like to have pleasure, but I don't want pain. But in order to have pleasure, you must have a certain kind of sensitivity. If you have that, it can get hurt, as well as delighted. So what do you want? So the teacher gradually makes you examine what you want. And he points out, every time you think you know what you want, he points out that you're in contradiction with yourself. You haven't thought it through. And later on you come to the limits of where you can think it through. And he takes you into another stage. He then asks you, who are you? What are you? And you say, well, I've always been told that I was Alan Watts, or someone like that. And he said, well, is that so? And so I have to go back and I have to look and find out, who am I? Well, I find I'm a sort of onion. I find that what I did present to him as myself was a mask, and I peel it off. And he says to me, ha, now let's look at your new mask. What's underneath that? So I peel that one off, and I go peeling. And suddenly I find, why, I thought there would be a pit at the center, but there isn't. There's just a pile of skins. And where am I? And, I hear some kind of droll laughter because I wasn't inside the onion at all. The onion was inside me. I was the space in which the onion was contained. But I was thinking that I was something in the middle of it. Or that I was a particular skin, a particular surface. The teacher has many, many ways of, they're called upaya, or skillful means, for getting people to find this out. All he really does basically, he says, what is it? What is reality? What is existence? And he makes you look at it. And you can do that in many kinds of ways. For example, you can take the end of your spectacles and bite. And you can feel that on your teeth, and you can concentrate your whole mind on that bite and try and find out, what is it that I'm biting? What is biting? What is the effort I feel inside my muscles? Where does that effort come from? What is the source of the physical activity? Concentrate on that. What is that thing that's there? That's the whole of yoga, really. Is finding out what it is. So very often, you see, a teacher, in trying to get you to a certain point of understanding as to what something is, will go, hut! See, just so at that moment, that noise might be the occasion through which you could find out what it is. Well, you see, you go on and on and on into this. And eventually, you come to the point where you find out that what it is you. You want one thing and it another. Although we're playing it that way, because that's the hide-and-seek game. You're it. Isn't it funny how in the game of hide and seek we designate somebody to be it? Now, that means then, you see, that you come to the point where you see through the game. But it's very complicated to come to that point because the game is so well done. The illusion. We are all so marvelously distinguished from each other. And these distinctions are fantastically complex. When we look out and see the pine needles on the trees, we say, well, they're not really very different from each other. They're all pretty much the same. I wouldn't know one from another if I really looked at them. They're all alike. And I suppose if somebody comes from Mars and looks at human beings and hasn't seen human beings before, they're all exactly the same. Same in way when Japanese people saw Westerners for the first time, they all looked the same. They all had red hair and long noses. Consequently, when we for the first time look at Oriental peoples or Negro peoples, we say, oh, they're all the same. I can't tell one from another. But you look deeply and you get used to them and they all start getting different. So would the pine needles. So you see, in that way, we are involved in being human, and therefore we all look incredibly different from each other. We all feel very different. And we accentuate this difference by having hate for each other or love for each other. And so it all grows. The element of differentiation becomes more and more and more and more emphasized. And that's scary, because we think, I'll lose me, I'll lose what I love, or I'll be overcome by the enemy, by the different, the other thing. You see, that's because we are at a point in the development of consciousness where we are at the extreme moment of differentiation. When you think, when I die, there will only exist what is other than me. Isn't that spooky? In other words, the here will disappear and the there will remain. Or if I go completely insane, I will be possessed by something completely alien. If you've ever been close to going insane, to feel the real horrors of this thing coming over you, where you have no control of it, and it's going to take you absolutely out of your mind. You're going to go into a state of mind where everything is unfamiliar in a threatening way. And you know how that can be? Imagine, for example, a perfectly weird smell. It doesn't remind you of anything. It isn't a good smell, it isn't a bad smell. It's utterly unclassifiable. And it spooks you. It's so strange. Well, imagine if everything became like that. Suddenly everything in front of your eyes became unspeakably strange and odd. And you feel, ooh, stay away from me, see? Well, that's very like some of the ways one goes into insanity. And but you see, it's what is taking over is the principle of strangeness, as distinct from the principle of the familiar, the other. So what if everything became strange, or other, or nothing? I was nobody home, you see. So these threats lie in the game of playing that the two sides of the world, the black and the white, the I and the thou, the subject and the object, don't go together. Now, we must therefore realize in studying Buddhism that it has this dialectical nature, and that the dialogue which the Buddha started by suggesting that you try to eliminate suffering by eliminating desire He knew perfectly well you can't eliminate desire, because if you try, that's already a desire, to eliminate desire. But he wanted the people to try the experiment and see what would happen. They did, and this kind of experimentation went on over hundreds of years, and as it went on, people began to record the various stages through which their experiments went. And as a consequence of this, Buddhism underwent changes. It developed an aspect of itself which was quite different from the first aspect. And we broadly speak of the two schools of Buddhism as being Theravada, which is closest to the original texts, and Mahayana, which is a development. Mahayana simply represents a deeper level of the dialogue. The Theravadins do what people so often tend to do, which is to stay with the authority of the original teacher. In other words, you might say that there are certain people who call themselves Bible Christians. They don't want any truck with the church. Let's stick with the simple teachings of Jesus as they originally were formulated and not have anything added to that. Other people would say, well, that's ridiculous, because if the simple teachings of Jesus are fruitful, they'll make everybody else think of new things, and they'll stimulate changes of consciousness, changes of ideas, and we'll add that all on, and it'll be like an acorn. When it's put into the ground, it no longer looks like an acorn. It turns into a huge tree. So that idea has been fundamental to Buddhism, that it grows as a tree grows. And so that the materials, the teachings of Mahayana Buddhism are contained in scriptures, and it's said that the Buddha gave these scriptures, but not in this world. These are the lectures he gave to the gods, to all kinds of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas in somewhere in some other kind of space. Now, what happened historically is, I suppose, this, that the Mahayana scriptures were written by Buddhist monks who had nothing much to do on long, wet afternoons. And they wrote and wrote. Do you know that the Mahayana Buddhist scriptures, when put together, are a set of books larger than the Encyclopedia Britannica? It's simply prodigious. But they are all attributed to the Buddha or to the great bodhisattvas, some of whom are, as it were, cosmological figures who don't incarnate on this level at all. So what happened? Those monks who wrote these things down genuinely felt that they were expressing a wisdom which was not their own. They wouldn't have dreamed of signing their own names to this stuff. They say, this I have understood from my deepest inner self. And that's not stinky little Nagarjuna or somebody. It's the great cosmic Buddha in me who has revealed this. So it's the teaching of the Buddha, and they did this in good faith. So although from one historical point of view the books of Mahayana Buddhism are much later than those of Theravada, or the Pali scriptures, you will often find Mahayanists arguing that they are immeasurably more ancient, because they incorporate a fundamental and eternal wisdom which is preached by the Buddha outside time. So as when we tell a fairy story, we say, once upon a time there was a beautiful prince, and so on, you know. When was that? Long, long ago, very long ago. It means this is a timeless tale. You see, there's always liable to be a beautiful prince. But so once upon a time has the same sense as the first word of St. John's Gospel, Enachi, in the beginning was the Word. That's in the archetypal, primordial beginnings. So that's where all those sutras come from. They say, well, thus have I heard. At a certain occasion, the Buddha was in the Tsushita heaven and was surrounded with this, that, and the other. Well, that means this is timeless. But actually, the Mahayana does represent a certain kind of historical evolution. The evolution resulting upon many, many people making serious experiments with the Buddha's original doctrine. They tried to transform their consciousness by eliminating desire. They tried, in other words, to overcome suffering by toughening themselves. And as a result of doing those experiments, they found out certain things about themselves. As a result of introspection, they found out a lot about the nature of consciousness and about the nature of just plain isness, existence. In certain directions, they found out that they'd been fools, that they'd set themselves to discover things that can't be discovered, as if you tried to bite your own teeth, or find out what's round the back of the mirror. And so, as a result of finding out that certain lines of development were dead ends, they didn't follow them anymore. Even though they might suggest to their students that they too investigate those roads. That's the nature again of upaya. Upaya is a clever device to get somebody to realize something which cannot be explained to him intellectually, because he won't believe it. I mean, it's easy enough. I can say, well, everybody here, you know you're all Buddhas. Every one of you. And I don't know what the hell you're doing around here, except come in for lunch. What do you want to learn? You got I can't tell you a thing. See, you have it all. And you say, well, that's all very well in theory, but I don't feel it to be so. So we have to go through this big thing of making all these experiments so as to find out that the theory is so. And that you really are, each one of you, the foundation and ground of the universe. Only you're going to find it out in a way where it, shall we say, won't go to your head. Where you'll be able to play it cool that you are the ground of the universe, and that it's not something to brag about. On the other hand, it's nothing to be ashamed of and hide. That's the middle way. Madhyamika is the basic form of Mahayana Buddhism, meaning the middle way, which was transmitted to Tibet and lies as ever at the foundation of Tibetan Buddhism. So you see the sort of principles I'm sketching out, the sort of way of synthesis, of putting together the worldly life and the spiritual life, the bound life and the free life, the hidden life and the found life. That's Mahayana. And because, you see, it ends up in what Frederick Spiegelberg has called the religion of no religion. This is the end of all this, you see, is to get rid of religion. Like when you go to a doctor and he gives you medicine and it cures you, you throw away the bottle. You don't keep on the stuff. So in Tibetan Buddhism, the aim of it really is to transcend Buddhism. So there are what are called the 6 precepts of Tilopa. Mano masam machadching, magam masam rangbabzad. Which means, Mano, don't think. Masam, have no mind. Machadching, don't meditate. Magam masams, don't contemplate. Don't discipline yourself. Keep your mind in its natural state. That's in Sanskrit called sahaja, naturalness. But nobody in the world can practice this. There's nothing you can do. Like saying to someone, "No, please, be natural." Could you be natural by any imaginable effort or non-effort? You couldn't possibly do it. You have, therefore, you see, before you can be natural and you suddenly have a feeling that you're not natural, that something's wrong with you, you have to do some very unnatural things. So as to find again that you can't be unnatural, even if you try very hard to do so. I can't separate myself from the divine unity by any stratagem whatsoever, but I won't know that that's so unless I try very hard to do so. So we all try, you see, very hard to be individuals, and then to be perfect individuals, to be in charge, to be God, to rule ourselves. And as a result, in the end, we find out that that wasn't necessary. It was like putting legs on a snake, as they say in Zen. So one returns then to the natural state where religion vanishes. And you can't say, when you look at the Bodhisattva, who is the Buddhist ideal, it's very difficult to distinguish him from an ordinary kind of a secular person.
We've been listening to Alan Watts with part 1 of the 3-part seminar, Wisdom of the Mountains.